broadly, that's Jen. Thank you, Effie, for turning on the recording. I was just going to say we're really excited to have Michael Leventhal joining us as a founder of RobotsMali, and with deep product management experience coupled with entrepreneurship engineering research, Gen AI, and machine learning. It seems like you've done a bunch of startups, so really excited to hear about that in the context of your presentations. 5 patents, 1 book, 1 major scientific publication. That's very exciting in addition to university teaching and experience across a variety of institutions. Michael, we're really excited that we were introduced to RobotsMali by our good friends at SIL, a number of whom have joined us today. And also that you'll be joining us in the Washington, D.C. area for our symposium. So if people are tantalized by your presentation, they can meet you in person and perhaps some of your colleagues in just a few months. But now I want to turn it over to you, Michael. Thanks for taking the time today to tell us about your really exciting activity that you're using with AI and local material development in Mali. And Michael, just let us know when you'd like Effie to advance your slides. She'll pull it up, and then over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. So Effie, you can bring up the presentation.
All right.
Okay, so I'm really happy to be here, really honored that you've all joined. And I hope I have something interesting and valuable to share with you. And it's good to start on a positive note before I start complaining, which I'm going to do. Next slide. About the title of this presentation, okay, with much love for the M-Education Alliance and realizing I'm certainly preaching to the choir here, but we are not working in local languages. We are working in what are in Mali national languages, and the primary language that we work in, Bambara, is spoken by many millions of people and many more millions of people than many languages that you would never think to call a local language. So unless we're ready to call Danish and Swedish and Estonian and Latvian local languages, we should not be calling African languages that are spoken by millions of people and are recognized as national languages in the country local. It's colonialism and diminution of the value of those languages and those cultures. So next slide, please. There's another thing you may find incongruous as I speak, and that is I'm white, and my name is Michael Leventhal, and I am going to talk as though I am speaking for Mali and Malians. And next slide, please. And the reason for that is that Mali is my country. I've lived there, well, a little less than a decade, which makes me a beginner. But I am married in Mali. My family all speaks Bambara as their first language. Everybody in my household speaks Bambara as their first language, eight people. And RobotsMali is a 100% Malian organization. I came to Mali and asked what useful thing I can do here. And it ended up with the creation of RobotsMali with a bunch of other Malians. And we're trying to do something good in our country as a grassroots effort from the beginning. And I'm very proud to be part of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about Mali a little bit, the Malian context. This is a country that has some problems. Okay, we have a HDI that puts us at 6th from the last. We have one of the lowest literacy rates in the world, different figures, 33%, 31%, 39%. Illiteracy in Mali is strongly a gender issue. Females have 20% higher rate of illiteracy than males, but for males and females, it's extraordinarily high rate of illiteracy. We do have 13 national languages in Mali. However, there is a dominant vehicular language, as linguists would say. So most people in Mali, about 80%, speak Bambara. They're not all L1 speakers, a lot are, but it's the language that people use to communicate. It's a so-called Francophone country. It's not French. It's Bambara that people use to get around and communicate among the different communities. And that would put the figure at the population, figures keep changing for Mali. It could be around 18 million speakers of Bambara. Okay, Bambara is part of the Manding language continuum. And we have an expert in Manding in the audience, so I speak under his control, and he will discipline me perhaps afterward if I've said anything wrong. But those languages are pretty much mutually intelligible. And that puts the entire community of these languages that are really a group of mutually intelligible languages at the neighborhood of 50 million. So you're talking about a very large, important population. When you look at the land area, it's France and Germany and maybe most of Western Europe. It's covering a huge geographical area. Okay, now, a strange thing in Mali is that schooling is exclusively in French, but French is not a language that is spoken in Mali in the home. It's not used in daily life. Children go to school and they don't understand French, and that is the language of instruction. Okay. This has had disastrous results. Okay, you can ascribe many different factors to why Malian education is such a disaster, but it's indisputable that the fact that children are taught in a language that they don't speak and don't understand as a major factor, with an end result that the learning adjusted years of schooling in Mali is 2.6 years, which is second worst in the world. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the context for our project and what we're trying to do something about. GAIFE is a generative AI for education, but it's a play on words because GAIFE in Bambara means book. So project book. So our goal is very specific here. We want to accelerate social and economic development of Mali through the development of written national languages and literacy. Okay, simply put, how can you build a country and join the modern world when most of your population cannot read and write? Okay, so if we don't solve that problem, we can't develop entrepreneurship, we can't do a million different things. Okay, I want to be clear about a point because it's a point I hear often. A lot of people, maybe the same that would say local languages, would say, oh, how nice. You're helping to preserve languages before all that knowledge is lost. In a broad sense, yes, but it's not that kind of preservation. Okay, as you've seen, we have a huge population. The language is under no threat of extinction. Malians have chosen to speak their language and not the former colonial language. Our goal is to open Mali to the world through language, through understanding of the language, ability to read and write our language, and the world to Mali. through our language. Okay, so what did we try to do in this project? Okay, number one, circled in red, because it's like 95% of what is most important to us. And that is to create insanely delightful books for children that children will be burning with desire to pick up and to read, to learn to read, to push through, to find out what they say. Okay, nothing is more important than that. Okay, there are a couple other things that are also important. One is quantity. And sometimes we've gotten little debates. Oh, you're using AI, you're using technology, you're emphasizing quantity over quality. No, we want both. And we think we can get really good quality with the AI, and we'll talk about that. Okay, but like the folks at Bloom say, the quantity is important. If you have a dozen beautiful books in a language, that's not going to incite anybody to learn that language, to read that language. You need a literature. And you need a literature, second point, in an age range. Okay, if you have children's books that teach the alphabet and reading up to third grade, and then you switch to the former colonial language, what's the interest in learning to read? There's nothing after. Okay, you're saying by that the language really isn't important. It's just a stepping stone to the colonial language. Okay, so we aimed, and we did create books from pre-reading, beginning reading, through books that can be enjoyed by kids in high school. And there may not be many kids that can read them now, but there will be. There will be, and we're ready. Okay. Another thing is high language quality with standard orthography. And this is really hard because Bambara is a written language, but it's not a very much written language. And there are many questions about how to write words, how to translate things, how to say things, vocabulary for medical, technical. Okay, it's a language that is in evolution as a written language, and it's really hard to get a language that we want to present to the kids and they learn as their written language. Okay, final point, that we wanted it to be teachable. We envisioned that this could be used in classrooms or classroom-like situations. So we wanted all kinds of pedagogical material to go with the books themselves. So a general principle, I heard it here in a Education Alliance webinar last year, I think. The term mirrors and windows, I think well known to people here, but it was the first time I heard it. Really critical to us that everything we do is Malian to the core. When children look at it, they see the physical and cultural environment that they know. What children have had experience with French language material is it speaks to a world that they don't see, they don't live in, and they can't understand. So yeah, we should have windows. We could show them many other things in the world, but we need to begin to get their understanding, to get what everything's about, and that they are comfortable and ready to explore. We want themes that are really relevant for Malian children and the Malian culture, and we use a lot of different sources, not one source. Traditional tales, I'll talk about that a little bit, but that's one source. Contemporary issues, things going on in Mali today, we take from world literature and just what our authors are inspired to write about. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, what have we done? What have we done so far? 156 books. They're all in the wonderful Bloom Library. We have our own shelf, so you can go there and you can see all RobotsMali books. There's a catalog with abstracts in English and in French to help you navigate bit, since you probably don't know Bambara. In fact, we've created both print and interactive versions of most of the books. So that it's about half, a little bit more than half, original titles, and then there are two different versions of those books. And it's a total of 1,700 pages of stories, approximately 800 illustrations, 1,600 comprehension questions that go with the books and the text, 200 pages of teaching guides. Okay, all of that original material, with one exception. We saw a book that we really loved on the Bloom Library, and we did translate that one. Okay, but all the others are created in Mali by us in the last few months. Okay, we've tested our work, the books themselves, and how they would work in different learning environments with different types of kids, in 6 different sites, environments, with about 300 children from the whole range of backgrounds, all kinds of backgrounds. And we've had amazing results. The part like kids are, insanely love the books, that's like 100%. That's really worked well. Okay. We didn't necessarily set out to prove that we could get immediate reduction in the illiteracy rate, and we were very surprised that we were able to measure that. So we had basically 2 groups of kids, kids that had background in French and were able to read somewhat. And none of them could read in Bambara. Like of the 300, 298 were unable to read a word in Bambara. Okay. By the end, kids that were able to read in French learned to read in Bambara in less than 12 hours. Okay. Too weird, too amazing, but really. And we worked with kids that were completely illiterate, never learned any French, never learned any reading in Bambara, speak Bambara, and we did a 32-hour reading program with them. They actually got 100% of them able to read. We classified 91% as showing some level of competence or literacy, and about 60% were reading at grade level. Approximate, okay? We tested in our environment with the tools that we had and the limitations of our project. Some have said, well, there's IGRA standards or this and that. We didn't, quite do it exactly right, but I was there. I observed this. I know that 300 kids learned to read in Bambara and loved it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, how the books are made. Maybe what most of you have come for to see what this process is. And I want to talk about one particular case, okay? Every book is different. Every book has a different origin story, and the process can vary for all those types of books. Okay, in this particular case, we have a very great person in Mali, the storyteller, the national storyteller of Mali, our Bakoroba Dambele, and she's written a lot of stories, almost all in French, some in Bambara, some in other languages. There's a link to an article there, which was published in 2012. Okay, I want to say about this article that she mentioned the book that we produced, the form Mani ni Bama, Mani and the Crocodile. Okay, she mentioned that book in this article in 2012. Okay, and she waited 12 years before she found somebody able to create a book and to get that out to the world. Okay, a lot of people ask when they hear about this project, why don't we encourage Malian writers? Why don't Malian writers write books? Why do we need to use AI? AI is, just going to erase the culture, and there's always an author. Behind every book, there's a creative person that directed how that book is going to be created and ensure the content, the Malian content, and the quality. And this is a good example of that, and it's also a good example of those that are saying, you know, why don't Malian writers just write? Well, there's a lot of obstacles to them getting published, to them getting funding. They actually have to pay themselves to get books out into the world. Madame Dembélé said in 2012, I appeal to our national authorities, our business community, to the banks, partners, and people of goodwill to allow us, the storytellers, to make our unique contribution to our country and to all the world. Okay, I think everybody on this webinar is going to agree with that sentiment, but it's not happening enough. Okay, next slide. Or noise.
And I'm sorry, could I ask if people to please mute their, we heard some background noise. Could everybody please mute their mics, please? Sorry, Michael, please continue.
Okay, I apologize deeply for this slide because yeah, it looks like quite a jumble, but and ideally I would have done it on a big canvas or across many slides, but haste, okay, but or I would have a pointer to walk you through it. But let's try and bear with me. We start in the left-hand corner with Nagunumi, the green little box, and the circles go around in, or the arrows go around in a circle to the top. Okay, so Madame Dembélé brought us her text. She had it electronically on her computer. It was a long text in beautiful literary French. Okay, and that's what she wanted to publish. Okay, we looked at the text and we said, you know, this is going to be challenging to translate. Why? Because a language embeds the culture. Okay, the language is full of devices, of understandings that develop over centuries, and a good writer in that language is doing and saying things that just don't come across in the other language without a lot of explanation. Okay, that's why a translation is typically an original work, a good translation in the target language. Okay, so what we said is we think we can take this work, why don't we make what we call a reduction? Okay, we're going to simplify, it was a very long story. We're going to simplify it, and we're going to get ready to translate into Bambara. We'll aim for younger children. So that reduction process, we use ChatGPT, we feed the French story into it, and then we work with ChatGPT, and you see a little icon. There's a circle with an arrow and a person inside. That's human intervention, human working on this with the AI tool. Okay, Français facile, make it easy French. Okay, that makes it easier to translate. There's a lot of things in French that don't exist in Bambara. Okay, aiming for a certain age. Okay, asking it to use non-idiomatic language, simplifying the grammar, and thinking about things that imply a physical context and asking it to put it into a West African context. So we do all of that and we produce, follow the next arrow, you get to another green scroll, Mani et le Quema.
Michael, I apologize. I think you are muted.
Yeah, and then can we ask Esaya Kamate to please mute her mic? Is there an Effie, if you could do that as well for the background noise? And back over to you, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, when was I muted? What did you last hear?
It was only just the last part of it, Michael, the last like 10 seconds.
Okay. So after this reduction with ChatGPT, we create a new work, which is now Mani et le Quema in the right-hand corner. It's a short text, and essentially it's a Bambara text written in French words. And this text would actually be ideal for a Bambara speaker that wanted to learn French because it takes out all the difficulties. Okay, we take that text and now we go into two branches, two different people can now work on this. One is to generate the images. So we have the schema of the story, and then we go to another AI tool for text to image, and we used a lot of different tools. They're listed there. And we work on that and work on that until we get the set of illustrations that are going to illustrate that story. And we work on them until they look like Mali, they represent a Malian environment, they are a culturally true and valid and recognizable environment for the children. And we may generate as much as, 2,000 images to get one good one. Whoop. Let's see, you can jump forward, back again. Okay, the second thing we do is now we take that story and we use the ChatGPT again, and we want to create the comprehension questions that I talked about, so the school material and the teacher's guide. And basically, we go into ChatGPT and we say, here's a story according to the following pedagogically well-known principles, create the discussion of themes, activities, games, and that we generate in French. Okay, we have not gone to the effort of translating that. And we generate a set of questions for the children that will go after the story. I see this less in English language material, but in French material, you see a lot of books. They have a whole section in the back that's all kinds of games and comprehension questions. And we found that's really great. We like that. So we generate those, and that's something ChatGPT is actually really great at. Okay, so now we have this simplified French text. We need to go to translation, which is another AI technology. ChatGPT and text to image is generative AI. The translation is transformation. It's almost the same thing, but a little different. And thanks to years of work, Google Translate and a meta technology, which you can find in Glossary, do a somewhat decent job of translating Bambara to Bambara from French. So we get the raw Bambara text, and I put 90%. Okay, that means that it's like 90% good, but there's a lot to correct. Okay, then we follow the next arrow, we go to the workbench, and the workbench is a whole set of linguistic tools. Okay, and some of those were developed by our friends in ALCO in Paris, who are linguists and specialists in Bambara and many African languages. Disambiguation to figure out the proper sense of a word, an orthographic dictionary, concordance to check meanings, collaborative review. So we can have 3 or 4 people looking at that text at once and writing their views on it and proposing different things. So we get out of that tool, and now we have, at the very bottom in the left corner, we have Manini Bama and Nininkalu. Okay, we have the Bambara story with the comprehension questions. We take that, we take the images we generated before, and we put them into the Bloom editor. It took us a while to get to the Bloom editor, but thank God we did find it. And so we're not Adobe professionals. It's designed to make things easy to create books, and it has a lot of capability. So it's really easy as a beginner, and you can do more and more with it. So we get page composition, all the copyright information for the images, front and end matter, fonts, formatting, and very important, it has audio capability, so we can record the stories. We don't have many audio stories, but we can add that. And interactive pages. So those questions, and I'll show you, they are made into interactive for the telephone online version of the story, and kids really like that. And then they get published onto the Bloom library. And then you get print version, ebook version, you got interactive, you got audio, and even more than that. And it's available to all the world. Anybody can download, anybody can view online, everything's free. And the book exists. Okay, next slide. I see there's a lot of questions. I may wait till the end so we get through, almost through. So we started out with a French book, Nagun Mani, and we also did translate that book into Bambara. So that became a Bambara text for which we created images. So we actually created 4 books. We created the long French text with images. We created short French text for younger children with images, questions, and all of that. We created a Bambara version of the long one and a Bambara version of the short one. And who owns copyright? I just saw that question. Everything is generated by AI tools and our team. So the copyright is RobotsMali. And if you generate images, you have the right to claim copyright to them. Won't get into the debate around that, but that's how it works. Okay, I want to point out that the first one we created, Mani Nibama, okay, the first book, the short version in Bambara. We did that with Madame Dembele. She came to our lab and we worked with her an afternoon. She had had this book for 12 years, hoping to get it out to the world. And when she saw, you know, we started in the beginning when I suggested we could make a short version of it. So she took out her notepad and she started to write, and she had written like half a sentence of the, you know, she said, this is easy. I can do this really fast. And at the same time, we had finished the entire short version of the book and the questions and all of these things. And she cried because, you know, she said, I have like 20 more stories like this. You know, this is an opportunity that didn't exist before. This is a miracle for me. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, we'll look at the book. So quickly, I'll tell you the story and you can appreciate the images. It's Mani is a girl who lost her mother, her father remarried, and she's got a mean stepmother. And there's going to be a big festival in the village, but her stepmother says you have to stay home and clean the house. You can't go with the other girls to prepare for the festival, do your hair and all those things. Next slide, please. Okay, the other girls go off, but they drop leaves along the way so that Mani can find out where they went and have her hair done and join the other girls. But a wind comes and blows the leaves away. Mani gets lost. She wanders into the marsh and she meets a fearsome looking crocodile. But the crocodile turns out to be quite charming. And he says, oh, you know, you're such a beautiful girl. You know, I could make you even more beautiful. I can show you how to braid your hair and to make a fantastic hairstyle. And I can put a gold, cover one of your teeth with gold, which is Malian cultural practice. And so she spends time with this charming crocodile, and he teaches her how to create these incredible hairstyles. Next slide, please. Okay, she comes back to her village and she's beautiful and everybody's astonished. And she goes to the festival and she's the belle of the ball. And everybody asked how she learned to do those things, but she doesn't tell. She wants to keep her secret. However, she has a friend, a boyfriend, and they're talking under a tree. She tells him her secret, and there happened to be a bird flying by who heard everything. And the bird was so delighted with this intelligence, he went and he told everybody. Next slide. Okay. The bird was so proud of himself, he went to go boast to the crocodile. The crocodile didn't care for gossip, so he ate the bird. Okay. So Mani married her beau, and she braided hair in the village, and she found fame and fortune. And the moral of the story ends with a moral, is, keep your mouth shut, when you have a secret to keep, and watch out for gossipy, chatty birds. Okay, the end. Next slide. So now the book is followed by questions, Ninin Kalu. And here's just two examples. They're asking, who taught Mani to braid her hair, and other. And these are interactive questions that are offered by Bloom. And the kids click on them, and you get a beep if the answer is right, and another beep if the answer is wrong. And kids love it. They think it's a game, and they ask to play the books in Bambara again and again and again. It's amazing. Okay, next slide, please. And last slide. Okay. One more point. One criticism that I've heard a lot is that we really should be telling African tales, that we should be preserving the culture. And one of the reasons I wanted to give this book as an example is because we did everything people say that we should do and assume we're not. Okay, giving an opportunity to African authors, Malian authors, to get their books out. And we love African tales, absolutely love them. Okay, but is that the end of what we want to offer to Malian children? Okay, in the United States, are you ready to throw out Dr. Zeus, Judy Blume, Maurice Sendak? Okay, do these people not have a right to write stories for children because they're not American folktales? And it's ridiculous, and it's another colonialist legacy. The Africans don't want to be in an ethnographic museum. Okay, they want to flourish and expand, and African tales deserve to be preserved, and we'll do our best, but we have a lot of other stories to tell. Okay, conclusion, AI in education. AI is a tool, okay, and any tool is a meaningless object until it is in the hands of a person who knows how to use it and has a purpose for doing so. When you say, I don't like that AI writes these books, AI doesn't write the books. It's a tool, like a typewriter, like a computer, like any thing that makes it easier to get to your objective. It gives capability. It gives power. Okay, if you don't have that person, you don't have anything. Now, the chain that we went through maybe looks difficult, and it is. Okay, but AI tools for education have only just reached the threshold of being useful. I mean, we were funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for a very short-term project. They said, just see if we can do something with this AI stuff, 3 months, just show us what you could do. Okay, and we showed what you can do with what is there now. They're just going to get better and better and better. Okay, so we can do this with the most difficult AI tools that will exist, and they will just get better. That's why you should get into this. Okay, beyond that, there are many, 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 many ways we can put AI into the educational process. It can be within the storytelling paradigm. It can be in developed countries. It can be in countries with difficult situations, with Mali. And it's a big subject, so I'm not going to even touch on it. That's a story for another webinar. Thank you.
All right, well, let's give a round of whatever, emoticons, hand waves, whatever for Michael. That was fabulous. Michael, we're just about to drop in the chat the PDF link to your presentation, so folks have that as well. I was going to start with some questions, but you have a bunch of them in the chat. So Michael, do you want to just start going through the chat and see if you could address some of those? And then I have a few as well.
Okay, I'd be happy to if you saw anything that caught your eye, because I was so focused on, you know, gabbing that I didn't pay
Okay,
attention. So if you
well,
see anything that comes back to you,
we're gonna make this. I'm gonna invite folks to, while you're looking at that, feel free, folks, just introduce yourself and throw your question. We'll take a few at a time, just because we just have a few minutes left. Michael may have a few more minutes. I'm just gonna put that out there, Michael, if you do, if there's additional questions, but we're gonna try to wrap in a few minutes. Does anybody want to go on the screen? Just quickly say who they are and then ask Michael specifically the question that they threw in the chat. Let's see how that works. Surinder, hey, Surinder, love it. Or you could raise your hand. Love it. Surinder, you want to greetings? Do you want to give your question to Michael?
Yes. Hi, Michael. Thanks for the presentation. It's really phenomenal what you're doing. I have one question. How many man hours does it cost approximately to create one book, the whole process, and how much does it cost? Oh, I'll introduce myself. I'm the CEO and founder of Smart Kids Club, and we make digital reading library for young children, and we have this nationwide Namibia Reads app in Namibia, but we mainly do English, and we are always looking for content, other regional content or other countries, folk tales and all to bring into our library. So I was just curious.
so we've created a lot of books, and it's really different for everyone. Actually, the long pole is illustration. We found with the current state of the tools, there's a lot of problems generating the kind of images. You know, one is the bias in the data. So getting something that represents Mali and Malians is really hard. It takes a lot of time to master the tools, and some stories are just really hard. So we could spend an entire week on trying to illustrate a challenging case, and we've been able to do some of the ones that just lent themselves easily in an hour or 2 hours to get the illustrations, the story. I gave the example, the Manini Bama was produced in about 4 hours with the author there. We had a text to start with, so we still spent a lot of time working with that text, but that was a slightly different process. It doesn't really cost anything to speak of. We did not develop our own models, which because we're a technical organization, I regret. You know, because that's what makes you great in the AI world, is to create your own model. But, you know, we had 3 months and we were going to make 100 books. And we just looked at the path that could produce something to make a difference in Mali in the time that we had. So we used ChatGPT, we used 4.0, it's $20 a month. The image tools are, let's see, one is $45 a month, US dollars, sorry. Another one is $65 a month. So, you know, we need an internet connection. You know, we need computers, but basically it doesn't cost anything. The thing that is the high price is human knowledge to do it.
Michael, that's great. And even sort of capturing that, maybe we'll follow up with some Q&A. Michael, I saw that Ricardo with the USAID Mali had a question about how do you let other actors in the Mali supply chain feel about these methods to generate books, and how are authors receiving compensation for the work they perform?
Well, I can say in the case, so the project was to produce, we got funding to produce the project over a few month period, and that obligated us to make all the material freely available. So we don't sell anything. However, we did pay from our funding the participants. Specifically in the case of, for example, Madame Dembele, we made an agreement with her because we said we can't sell the book, but if we could generate the Bambara and give that for free, then we will produce the books in French for her with the illustrations and the layout and all of that, and give that to her to do what she can with it. So in that case, we bartered. I think in the long term, I can say there's creators behind every book, and I guess you'd say they got paid a salary for their participation in the project, but our means of diffusion, there are no royalties or anything like that, which is the case for anything published in Bambara and Mali since forever. That's why Madame Dembele for decades cannot get her books out.
Well, that was really interesting about being able to step in and help that voice. I see my friend Juan Pablo from UNICEF has a question. Juan Pablo, over to you.
Thank you, Tony and Michael. Great presentation. Yeah, first, I think, and I can see in the questions of the chat that this is, this is truly showing what's possible and the questions and legal and ethical considerations that this type of technology change will bring to book production, but many other areas. But I just wanted to congratulate you. It is quite interesting. So my question is related to the previous one. A couple of questions. One is about sort of being able to pay to graphic illustrators, sort of that profession, being able to create something there that could enable payment and start perhaps a local economy of paid artists. This is, of course, Michael, a very hot topic in the US with illustrators and book production, but in your case it's different, but I would just like to know if that's sort of in the pipeline as you think of business models. And the second is more perhaps, is there any emerging or long-standing movement to change the language of instruction? So over to you.
And also just a brief editorial is for those, Michael, if you still have the time, we're still recording. We'd love to, if you want to stay around for a few minutes, we'll invite those that need to leave. We will make this recording available. Effie, how are we going to make this recording available? And then we'll get to your questions, Juan Pablo.
So the M Education Alliance has a YouTube channel. We technically record Literacy League meetings. So this is an example of that. So we will have this up on our YouTube channel next week.
Okay, and for those that for future presentations, feel free to subscribe to our e-news. And if those who have additional questions about Literacy League, including upcoming conversations like this, just shoot us an email. All right, over to you, Michael, assuming that you have another few minutes. Is that okay, Michael?
Oh yeah, it's okay, sure.
Okay.
So I guess first about the illustrator, let's just say the future. So we are putting together a plan to assemble the, let's say, creatives in Mali. So actually, Madame Dembele is head of the president of the kind of League of Storytellers of Mali. We were just talking yesterday with the Union of Writers in Mali and talking about how we can teach them this stuff. We've taught a lot of people already how to use these tools. We've given training for free to lots of people. I think that there will be a model that emerges, and we want to bring in that community. Let me just say again, the illustrators so when we're using generative AI, the person is doing illustration. It's not the same as a person that has drawing skills, our painting skills, or what traditionally you do. There's an enormous amount of skill in generating the content and often post-editing the content. And it's not that different from working with tools like Adobe Illustrator. Okay. And in fact, our visual content could be improved. I would love to have somebody that's a whiz at Adobe Illustrator on our team that could take some of the images and make them really, really, really eye-popping. So, so hopefully that, those things will happen. I'm sorry. Can you just remind me the second question?
Bambara language of instruction, any movement to
Yeah,
change the language of instruction?
Yes, very important question. Mali recently changed its constitution. It said French is no longer our official language. Our 13 national languages are our official languages. And there's a suggestion in that the language of instruction, at least in part, would move to national languages. There is not, there's also a large World Bank and global partners for education funded project in Mali, where reintroducing national languages into the curriculum in the lower grades is on the plan. Okay, so things are happening, but to give you my frank assessment, there is really a big question about resources, how to do it, how to get ready, and there's a lot of inertia. There's a big, as I suggested in the beginning of the presentation, there's a class divide in Mali. Those that speak French are the upper class, and they don't really have that much interest in that changing very, very fast. And that's a significant break. That creates inertia. We're trying to show department where they do have to work in the national languages, but the formal school system, there is going to be resistance, and it might take a while.
Thanks, Michael. I know there's a few other questions. We'll wrap up in just a few minutes. Michael, could you elaborate? Why did you select the Bloom software? And I'll note my last name is Bloom, and I've actually presented on Bloom software in Bloomington, Indiana. So I thought that was pretty funny. But could you elaborate on why you chose Bloom software? I know we have a number of our SIL colleagues, and what you saw as the advantages and disadvantages of using that particular software package.
So I went to, does that look like a heart? That's, I love. Okay, we really had a mess because, as I say, we were not book publishers, and we actually produced the 100 books in another software, and they were really a mess. And then we discovered friends at SIL Mali, SIL Mali. And they didn't say, like, you really need to use this. They just said, there's this Bloom thing, and we checked it out. So it's just, it's designed to those that don't have a lot of skill in bookmaking are going to find it extremely easy and fast. Okay, some of the critics would say it doesn't have high-end capabilities to make really, really beautifully creative laid out books. But in fact, it's got a lot of capabilities that it takes time to figure out. So yeah, probably the Adobe publisher and these kind of tools, it probably does not compare. But the multimedia aspect of it is awesome. And in ancient past, I worked on such systems. I know how hard it is to build reliable systems. So you get print books, you get audio books, you get books for people with visual deficiencies, you get online books with interactive activities, and all that comes out of a single source, right? And then you can publish in all these different ways. And that's just an awesome accomplishment. And then you get on the Bloom library and you have a global site to get your content out to the world. And there's more to say about Bloom. So yeah, it's not the high end. I don't think they would argue that, but it's really good. And it's just it just enabled us to do the quantity of work that we've done and really fast. So.
Well, that's perfect. And I know there are, if you have questions, there's a number of SIL colleagues that are on the line. Michael, there's a few questions. Maybe we'll take 2 more rounds and then conclude in another just 5 minutes about illustrations. So I've seen a few about maybe somewhat the inconsistency of the graphics in a book, that if that is an issue, that it's just, so dissimilar looks and feels, but it's part of telling the story. And then there is a question about how does the AI generated images affect the reading comprehension for young readers? Is it easy for them to follow the stories and recognize characters? And that was from Janet Pagluica. So do you want to sort of comment on the illustrations?
Yeah. So the AI tools for generating images, as I've said, it's the hardest it will ever be to use, and it's really difficult. One of the major problems is character consistency. So if you're telling a story about a character, that character changes in every image. There's been some evolution in that area. Tools like Midjourney have a technique for getting the same character doing different things. You have to cut and paste, but it's a really hard problem. And our books are not as great as they could be, primarily because of that problem. We want high quality books. I think we have extremely high quality. They're not perfect. Our emphasis is on creating children's literature in Bambara and getting it to kids and getting them excited and getting them reading. So we live with the defects. So I'm sorry, I guess I have a memory only for one thing at a time. The second question was about illustrations and
yeah, it was about kit. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the question now.
Oh, kids. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
I just needed a trigger. No, this is the hook. This is an amazing thing, right? Over the top. I don't think conventional books have as much illustration as we do. And we really concentrate that the illustrations themselves can tell the story, that the kids can look at it and it generates lots of ideas. And, especially none of the kids can read in the beginning in Bambara. So of course, the first thing they do, I understand this is a bad thing in the reading world. But they do this whole reading thing. They look at the images and they understand what's going on, and that really helps them then to engage with the text and figure it out. But they are just enraptured by the images, and it's just a very critical part. And I just hope someday we can do the images even better than today, or we hire illustrators that will clean up, some of the things that AI doesn't do great.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Michael, as a concluding question, and hope that we could just keep the dialogue going, we'll capture in the chat, and Michael, if you have time post-event to respond, we'll also include that as part of the video interview, the Q&A. What's your next project, Michael, that you're thinking of from here? You obviously have a lot of interest, but where would you like to take this in the next year?
Well, we hope to get more strongly established as an AI4D, AI for Development laboratory. And that may happen in the next couple months, pretty soon. It's looking good. And our number one theme, effort is going to be around AI for education. And as I said, and I hinted, there's a lot more that we can do. So we want to maybe pass the production of books onto the creative community in Mali. So we're going to build that community. We've been training a lot of people. We've been training the government even in how to do this. Okay. We want to get back to the more like hardcore building our own AI stuff. And that's what the lab will do with a focus on education. So things like adaptive tutors, things that can help. We have extreme teacher shortage, so if the books can actually help the kids to know if they're reading correctly or not, that's something very interesting. So creative communities around AI for education, and we're all about economic development. If we can create some startups in Mali around these themes and help people create companies and products.
Well, Michael, I want to say thank you. This was a great turnout. So for our Literacy League community and new folks as well. I see a bunch of friends and hopefully new colleagues who will join us for future presentations. Of course, Michael, RobotsMali would be welcome to join our Literacy League community. We'll make the recording available, as Effie had said, on our Literacy League page, promoted in the e-news and on our Pulse Media channel. But maybe however we demonstrate our affection for Michael, emoticons, round of applause, whatever else as well. Thumbs up, I like that, Juan Pablo. Michael, thanks to you and your colleagues. Michael, I did drop in the URL for RobotsMali, and if that's not the correct one, please, because I know you guys are doing some other quite amazing stuff. We were first attracted to the stuff you were doing about STEM education in Mali, and lo and behold, this amazing stuff that you guys are doing with AI for language material development. So again, folks, please feel free to subscribe to our e-news if you'd like to know about future webinars. This is just one community of a number of communities that we support. And if you'd like to meet Michael and some of our other colleagues, we will be in Arlington, Virginia, and Washington at the symposium in October. Feel free to drop Effie and I information, questions if you have it about the event. So we're going to conclude. We'll turn off the recording, Effie as well. And Michael, did you drop already in the chat your email if people wanted